94-year-old Clint Eastwood faced down a gang of 5 menacing bikers on a quiet evening in Carmel-by-the-Sea. But when he made a single phone call, the tables turned dramatically. What followed was not just a confrontation, but a revelation that would change the dynamics of the town, proving that even legends have unexpected allies. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and please complete our 1,000 subscribers for more inspiring stories. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky over Carmel-by-the-Sea with hues of gold and crimson, casting long, dramatic shadows across the quaint coastal streets. This picturesque town, known for its serene beauty and the kind of peace that whispers of stories yet to be told, was home to Clint Eastwood, the 94-year-old legendary actor and director. Here, in this tranquil haven, Clint had carved out a life far removed from the glitz of Hollywood, embracing instead the simplicity and charm of a place that seemed to exist in its own timeless bubble. As he walked back to his home after a quiet evening stroll, the air was filled with the gentle murmur of the ocean, a sound so familiar it was almost like background music to his life. His steps were slow but steady, each one measured with the confidence of a man who had walked through decades of life's varied scenes, from the blistering sands of Iwo Jima to the dusty streets of the Wild West, all brought to life through his cinematic legacy. However, the peace of this evening was about to be shattered by an unexpected cacophony. The roar of motorcycles suddenly pierced the calm, an anomaly in this setting where the loudest noise was usually the cry of seagulls or the gentle crash of waves. 5 bikes, their engines growling like predators on the hunt, screeched around the corner, coming to a halt in a semicircle around Clint. The riders, each clad in leather jackets marked with symbols of a life outside the law, looked more like characters from one of Eastwood's own films than real-life figures in this quiet town. Leading them was a man whose very appearance spoke of hard battles and harder lives. A scar ran down his cheek, a permanent reminder of some past conflict, and his eyes were as cold and unyielding as the steel of the handcuffs he might soon wish he hadn't left at home. His smirk was one of easy, misplaced confidence as he eyed Clint. "Well, well, what do we have here, boys?" he drawled, his voice thick with both malice and amusement. His companions, a motley crew of tough-looking individuals, chuckled and revved their engines, the sound echoing off the nearby houses, disrupting the evening's tranquility. Clint, ever the stoic figure, adjusted his hat, his gaze steady, betraying no fear. He had faced down outlaws, corrupt officials, and the camera's relentless eye. This was but another scene in his long, storied life. The bikers, perhaps mistaking his silence for weakness or age for frailty, began to circle like sharks, their taunts and jeers filling the air. "You think you're tough, old man." One of them, a younger biker with tattoos winding up his neck like serpents, taunted, stepping closer to Clint. He gave Eastwood a shove, intending to unbalance him to prove his point. But Clint, with the grace of experience, swayed but did not fall, his eyes never leaving those of the young aggressor, sending a silent message of defiance back. The tension escalated, the air charged with the potential for violence. But Clint knew the power of silence, of patience. He'd learned long ago that sometimes the quiet before the storm can be more powerful than the storm itself. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his cell phone, an act that seemed almost quaint in the face of such aggression. The bikers laughed, their mockery clear. They believed this was the act of a man in retreat, calling for help, an old man out of his depth. But there was something in Clint's deliberate movement, something in the calm before the storm that made even the most boisterous among them pause. As he dialed a number, the leader's smirk began to fade, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. The phone rang once, twice, and then a voice answered, one that carried the weight of authority and familiarity. Clint's conversation was brief, his words low and barely audible to those around him, but the effect was immediate. The bikers, who had been so sure of their dominance, started to sense that the balance of power might not be as they assumed. The leader's face paled, the color draining from his cheeks as if he'd seen a ghost. Whispers of doubt passed among the group, their bravado cracking. The once loud, mocking atmosphere turned to one of tense silence, the kind before an unexpected plot twist. What followed was a moment of realization for the bikers, a dawning that this was no ordinary encounter. Clint's calm was not that of a man defeated, but of one who knew exactly how this scene would end. The leader, now visibly shaken, looked around as if expecting something or someone to emerge from the shadows. This was just the beginning of an evening that would become part of Carmel-by-the-Sea's lore, where an icon of cinema would once again demonstrate that age is merely a number when it comes to standing for one's dignity. Who was on the other end of that call, and what would the consequences be for these unsuspecting bullies? The answers would soon come, but not before the night unfolded in ways none of them could predict, weaving another chapter into the rich tapestry of Clint Eastwood's life. The tension in the air was palpable, the silence that followed Clint's phone call holding more weight than any of the bikers' earlier taunts. The leader, whose smirk had now completely vanished, looked around as if the serene streets of Carmel-by-the-Sea had suddenly turned into a stage for his own downfall. His companions, sensing the shift, began to murmur among themselves, their earlier confidence seeping away like water through sand. Then, as if on cue, the distant wail of sirens began to slice through the night's calm, growing louder with each passing second. The sound wasn't just that of law enforcement, it carried the echo of inevitability, of consequences catching up. The bikers, now visibly agitated, looked at each other with wide eyes, the reality of their situation beginning to sink in. In moments, the street was bathed in the harsh, flashing lights of police cars, their arrival turning the scene into something out of a high-stakes movie finale. Officers spilled out, their movements swift and coordinated, clearly prepared for more than just a routine call. Among them was a man in his 50s, his uniform crisp, his face set with the sternness of someone who had seen too much to be easily impressed or intimidated. "Mr. Eastwood," the officer greeted upon spotting Clint, his voice carrying a tone of respect and familiarity. Clint nodded in acknowledgement, a silent testament to their long history. "We've got this under control," the officer assured, his words not just for Clint, but for the gathered crowd, the neighbors who had started to peek from their windows, drawn by the commotion. This officer was none other than the chief of police for Monterey County, a friend from Clint's past, now in a position to respond with significant force. The bikers, who had come with the intention to intimidate, found themselves on the receiving end of that very emotion. The handcuffs came out, and the leader, known henceforth in local whispers as Scar, tried to muster a defense. "This is a misunderstanding," he started, but his words were weak, lacking the conviction they once held. As the police moved in, the bikers were systematically detained, their protests fading into the backdrop of the night. The community watched, some in awe, others in relief, seeing in this moment not just the arrest of a gang, but the reaffirmation of the town's spirit. The narrative was shifting. This was no longer about a confrontation, but about the community's response to it. The bikers, now subdued and led away, cast looks back at Clint, a mixture of resentment and newfound respect in their eyes. The leader, especially, seemed to grapple with the gravity of his miscalculation. "You didn't have to do this," he muttered, almost to himself, his voice a shadow of its former bravado. Clint, with the same calm that had defined his stance from the beginning, responded, "You chose this path, son. I just made sure you saw where it leads." His words were not of triumph, but of a lesson taught, one that perhaps would resonate beyond this night. As the police cleared the scene, the neighbors began to disperse, but the story of this encounter would linger, whispered in cafes, recounted at dinner tables. It wasn't just about Clint Eastwood standing up to bullies, it was about what this incident meant for the community of Carmel-by-the-Sea. The event had sparked discussions on security, on the legacy of a man who, even in his 90s, could still command respect and orchestrate change with just a phone call. The night slowly returned to its quiet. The ocean's waves once again the loudest sound, but the repercussions of this evening were just beginning. The bikers' trial, the community initiatives that would follow, the strengthening of ties between the residents and their law enforcement. All these were chapters yet to be written. But for now, as Clint walked back to his home, he knew that this night had added another layer to his legend, not through the lens of a camera, but through the heart of a community. In the days that followed the dramatic encounter on the quiet streets of Carmel-by-the-Sea, the town buzzed with the retelling of Clint Eastwood's stand against the biker gang. The story transcended local gossip, making its way into newspapers and onto social media, painting Clint not just as a relic of cinematic history, but as a living embodiment of resilience and community spirit. The legal proceedings against the bikers moved forward with the kind of attention usually reserved for high-profile cases. Charged with harassment, attempted assault, and in the case of their leader, Scar, with orchestrating the intimidation, the trial became a focal point not just for local justice but for broader conversations on gang culture, community safety, and the role of public figures in shaping societal responses to crime. Clint, however, sought no glory from this event. His focus was on turning this incident into a catalyst for positive change. He initiated meetings with town officials, law enforcement, and community leaders, advocating for enhanced safety measures. His influence led to the installation of better street lighting, the formation of neighborhood watch programs, and the establishment of youth outreach programs aimed at preventing the kind of life choices that had led the bikers down their path. The trial itself was a spectacle, drawing not only local interest but also national attention due to Clint's involvement. The courtroom saw Scar and his crew facing their actions head-on, with testimonies that painted a vivid picture of gang life's allure and its ultimate hollowness. The younger members of the gang, perhaps influenced by the ordeal and by the respect they saw in the community's response, began to speak out. Their words became part of a broader dialogue on rehabilitation, on giving second chances, and on the power of community in changing lives. Clint's call to the chief of police had done more than just bring immediate aid. It had sparked a friendship that would benefit the town in tangible ways. The chief, now seen more often around the community, not just in uniform but as a neighbor, worked hand in hand with residents to foster a sense of security and mutual respect. Their joint efforts turned what could have been a divisive incident into a moment of unity, showing that even in a small town, big changes could be made through cooperation. The bikers, particularly the younger ones, were sentenced to community service instead of just jail time, a decision influenced by Clint's advocacy for restorative justice. This approach allowed them to contribute positively to the community they had once threatened, planting trees, painting murals, and working in local shelters. It was a way to give back, a chance at redemption that many hoped would steer them away from their past lives. Back at his home, overlooking the Pacific, Clint often sat on his porch, the ocean's endless dance a backdrop to his reflections. He wasn't proud in the conventional sense, rather, he was contemplative. He had lived through another chapter of his life, one where he could still make an impact, proving that age was merely a number when it came to standing for what was right. The story of that night would be recounted for years, not just as a tale of confrontation, but as a narrative of how a community could come together, how one man's resilience could inspire change, and how respect, once lost, could be reclaimed through actions rather than words. The incident had left an indelible mark on Carmel-by-the-Sea, turning it into a case study of community strength and the enduring influence of individuals who live by example. As the sun set over another day, casting its golden glow over the town, the residents felt a renewed sense of safety and pride. The legend of Clint Eastwood grew, not because of another movie role, but because of his role in their lives, a reminder that heroes can still walk among us, shaping the world with quiet strength. And so, under the starlit sky of Carmel-by-the-Sea, life continued, with each new day bringing its own adventures, but always with the legacy of that night to guide them, ensuring that the community would never forget how one man's call could change everything. Thank you for watching till the end video. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories.